Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Terry Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and today I want to talk about Saturn's retrograde in Aries starting July 26th and ending December 10th, 2026. Saturn will go from 14 degrees, almost halfway through Aries, back down to 7 degrees before it moves forward. This video is probably not going to be like other videos that you watch on Saturn because I'm going to turn this thing upside down. For years, as I studied astrology, I was told that Saturn rewards over time. That's the beauty of the 11th house and Saturn's co-rulership in Aquarius. Well, here I am at 66 years old, almost 67. And, I'm kind of ready to claim the reward. What is Saturn? How does Saturn bestow that reward? Is it something I just sit and wait for, like Santa Claus at Christmas time? No, that's not how Saturn works. Saturn's energy for me as a intuitive astrologer is not an anchor. Saturn is an architect. Saturn puts us on a journey in the beginning of our lifetimes of acquiescing to authority, to pleasing our parents and our teachers and our pastors and the people who hold authority over us. And then as we journey through life, we start to have our own beliefs, our own opinions, our own ideas, and we start to discern about the things that we were given historically, beliefs, opportunities, and limitations, a certain history. And so Saturn becomes a journey that allows us to have self-authority, to start to define what actually works and what doesn't. And this plays even stronger in Aries than it does in most of the other signs. Limitation turns into contrast, and contrast turns into an opportunity to create consciously, to know that our choices are ours. And whatever the journey of those choices are, they are an opportunity to extract wisdom, to become a master of our skills, our thoughts, and our manifestations. During this retrograde, Saturn is going to make aspects to Jupiter. It'll make aspects to the personal planets, but I'm more focused in on the landscape of what we're walking through. And I believe that Jupiter's entry into Leo, trining Saturn, is a beautiful dynamic. I actually believe that Saturn and Jupiter are not contrasting energies, but together they define what I believe, which is Jupiter. The definition is Saturn. What will I build that is sustainable and long lasting? Saturn, and how that will allow me to expand as a human. Well, I actually don't think I'm a human. I think I'm a soul having a human experience. So if I am a soul having a human experience, then Saturn representing history allows my history to provide information that allows me to cut out or to release or to integrate or to um, recalibrate what has held me back and what can move me forward. Um, I was thinking as I was doing this video how Saturn rules Capricorn, and Capricorn naturally squares the Aries energy. Capricorn traditionally is thought of as leadership, where people see us and our reputation lives, which very much makes other people and their opinion of us dictate what we do. The Aries energy does not allow that. The Aries energy sort of says, I don't care what you think about me. So here, I think it's very interesting that Saturn in Capricorn squares Aries, but Saturn, as the co-ruler of Aquarius, sextiles Aries. This is another element of Saturn actually being very favorable to the Aries energy, because the square to me of the Capricorn energy and the Aries energy is the tension between what is expected of me, how it will affect my public reputation, and what I want for myself. So Saturn in the sextile to Aquarius, okay, is saying we need to activate the future. We need to activate and awaken to a greater expression of our authentic self. That once we've endured the responsible path for others, it is now an opportunity to walk a path of discipline for ourselves. And in that path of redefining and exploring ourselves in new ways, we can actually help others do the same. I also think that Saturn in Aries is also asking, because Aries is the passion, the drive, the action, the impulse. And for me, Saturn's asking, what are you excited about? What are you passionate about? And how are you creating the framework for that to be sustainable? I really think that Saturn's influence in Aries right now is defining between what I have been traditionally revered for, maybe even praised for, and was that authentic to me and what I want for myself and how I want to expand. Um, Saturn, I don't want to negate Saturn's restrictions, Saturn's what appears oppressive. In past videos, I referred to Saturn as Denzel Washington's character in, um, oh my God, the movie. I can't think of the name of the movie all of a sudden. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's one of my favorite movies. It's a football movie. Oh my God, I can't think of it. Oh, Remember the Titans. Sorry, I had a brain fart. But now I want to have you think of Saturn as Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid, because there's a period of time when Daniel-san goes to Mr. Miyagi, he knows what he wants. He knows what he wants to build, but he doesn't have the structure to do it. Then Mr. Miyagi puts Daniel-san through a series of what looks like chores, right? What looks like he's just frickin' cleaning his car. He's waxing the car. He's painting the fence. He's redoing the patio floor. But then after this period of time, when Daniel-san is so frustrated, he goes to Mr. Miyagi. He's like, "What are you doing? You're not teaching me anything." And then Mr. Miyagi says, "Give me wax on." And then they start this sprawling. And it's like one of the best parts of the movie for me, because there's where Daniel-san recognizes that all that hard work, all that what appeared to be useless slavery was actually developing skills and instinct to be able to execute those skills without thinking about it. That's so Aries. It's really great. So I think this is what this retrograde is all about. Saturn allowing us to master our mind, our sense of self, our sense of sovereignty. How do I want to expand myself? What gives me authority over myself? And using my history as a defining tool to that. Saturn retrogrades in astrology are not, sorry, Saturn returns in astrology. Everybody who is having one, they can have fear and trepidation. Oh no, what is Saturn going to do to me? In Saturn's return at 30, this is where you first start the discernment between the authority you've been trained for and the authority over self. By the time you turn 60, this is really the reward phase of Saturn, where you get to implement all the things you've been growing through the chapters of your life. So I think that I kind of, I mean, I'm not impervious to the challenging sides of these planets, but I'm also very focused on garnishing the reward from them, because Saturn's reward lasts. It doesn't go away. So part of that sustainability comes from also walking through that arduous path. Because when you've walked an arduous path and you start to do it again, it feels familiar. And rather than having history repeat itself, we now get to capitalize on history and innovate and move into the future. Saturn has to have a bit of a rebellious nature, because Saturn co-rules Aquarius. We don't think about that much. All right, let me look at my little notes here. Saturn is a journey of discernment. Old structures are challenged by a new consciousness. Saturn will ask in Aries, what do I preserve? What do I release? What do I refine? And what do I want to pass on in the way of a legacy and what I'm representing? And in the Aries energy, at the highest vibration, is bravery, it's self discovery, it's passion, it's fire, it's exciting. So, and that is the other question, Saturn, what will keep you excited? Because the Aries energy by nature can a little bit get excited and then burn out. We're going to talk about Jupiter. I'm going to go through a few of the key dates in a minute that I think are important during the retrograde. But one of the most important conversations is the one that Saturn is having with Jupiter. Jupiter is about belief. Jupiter is about expansion. Jupiter is about entrepreneurship. Jupiter is about optimism. In Leo, it's about optimism about myself, my self-expression. It's about betting on myself. It is wanting to break the box in the biggest possible way while pleasing the audience at the same time. And I think that sometimes this question that Jupiter can have inside of Leo is, do I believe in my uniqueness is worthy? That it is worthy of an audience. And at the same time, the trine to Saturn is saying, when I build something that is truly passionate to my heart, it will find an audience and it will naturally expand me. I was thinking of so many metaphors for these two planets, but one that really kind of hit me was that Jupiter is like a designer, right? I watch a lot of home building shows and renovation shows, and Saturn's like the contractor or the architect. So Jupiter provides a picture of what can be, and then Saturn holds us to continuing through that process and then allowing for fine tuning, allowing for further expansion, allowing for new ideas to come in, but continuing to stay the course of what truly gets us up in the morning. I truly, when I watch these home shows, and I know people are, going through these, pipes break and things don't get delivered and their creative vision gets challenged, but it is the passion behind it that perseveres through the challenges. This is part of Saturn's reward. And while Saturn is in a conversation with Jupiter, Saturn is not necessarily in a conversation with Pluto, but Pluto is in a conversation with Jupiter. So Pluto's conversation with Jupiter, the opposition, is really bringing up the underbelly of how other people have power and control over us. And I think that echoes back to the trine with Saturn and Jupiter, because Saturn is going to also play to authority, but allow it to be the authority of myself, to be discerning about whose opinion matters anymore, whose applause matters anymore. I think it's really actually a beautiful transit. So while it is a retrograde, going back through the degrees of the earlier degrees of Aries, it's an opportunity not to feel restricted, but to refine, to say, okay, when I initially walked through these degrees, I felt a lot of erosion. Neptune was there, eroding structures that were not sustainable. And now there's this opportunity to really start to practice your mastery. If you go back to the movie, The Karate Kid, there was a period of time when Daniel-san went out onto the ocean and practiced the skills that Mr. Miyagi had taught him. And you see this whole montage of him on a rock doing this crazy kick, and getting his balance. It's such a beautiful metaphor. If you have not seen The Karate Kid in a long time, go watch that movie, because you'll really start to understand that Daniel-san represents sort of a Jupiterian and Aryan expansion of self, while Mr. Miyagi represents the discipline to get there. Oh, it's so exciting. This is why I didn't put any makeup on, because as I was trying to blow dry my hair in 90-degree humidity or 90% humidity, It wasn't working. So I just got excited about doing the video. Let me pull up the chart. I know I'm quite a conversationalist. I don't have quite the Saturnian structure necessary. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on Saturn. Today is the day where the retrograde starts, about halfway through the day, Pacific time. Again, I'm not necessarily going to address the planets, the personal planets. I really want to kind of focus in on what Saturn's doing. Click off of here. Saturn here, I'm going to go actually, Saturn stays at 14 degrees until August 17th. This is pretty significant because it will, it's in a conversation with Mercury, but more so, I'm focusing in on Jupiter. So let me go there because that's where I think I'm only giving you key days. I'm not going to go through the whole retrograde. I don't think it's necessary. So when I get to the 17th of August, I really like the way this feels because Mercury is on the other side and in an exact trine to Saturn, and there's Jupiter. My thoughts, the ideas, the concepts I've had, what I learned in my childhood, it's not to be thrown away. It's to be, how can I say it? It's almost about transforming it. You know, when something poopy happens, it turns into manure. Manure makes the garden grow. So I think that the Mercury retrograde that was happening in early part of July is now you can capitalize on that and start to really put that structure, put that, and this is what I'm talking about is mental structure. I'm not talking about actually a doing energy. I should probably be a little more clear. This is very thought provoking. Saturn is the actual doer, the builder, but these two are more about concepts and ideas. And actually, you know, they're considered their natural homes are opposing each other. But this is where the vision comes in and where the the details can potentially come in, how it will fit into my everyday life. So I think this is, and Jupiter's growing into a tighter and tighter trine with Saturn. And by the time Saturn goes almost a whole month at 14 degrees until it moves 1 degree retrograde at 13 degrees, and that happens on the 28th. I think this is significant because there are a variety of things that the 14th degree represents. Number one, the one is the sun, my heart, my courage to follow my passion, which also the sun rules the Leo energy. Stay with me here. And then the four naturally represents there's a couple of theories, but the four can represent the Cancerian energy, which is what feels like home to me. But in Christopher Witecki's step system, the fourth degree represents the Uranian degree of moving into the future. Now we see that as Jupiter moved further into Leo and Saturn retrograde 1 degree, we're looking at the 13th degree representing the Aries energy, the first part, the one of the 13 representing the sun, the heart, the courage. Now the three is the Jupiter energy of expansion, belief, and faith. We are literally planting the seeds and the structural thoughts during this retrograde about what is sustainable and how am I going to go about taking that action. Again, I'm focused on Saturn right now, and I'm not going to talk about the aspects to the other parts of the chart because I think that the more dynamic aspects are the ones that are about my belief system, because my beliefs are going to be the impetus or the seedling for what I create and how solid it is. You will feel the Saturn retrograde at 13 degrees trining Jupiter from the 28th all the way through until the 12th of September. Within degree. You actually feel it from the 28th. It's actually a little bit before this because within a 1 to 2 degree orb. So I think this is very, very favorable time. I think that overall Saturn and Jupiter are not as opposite as they appear on the surface, that at a much deeper level, Both planets co-rule two signs and are progressively co-rule them. Um, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, my belief system that takes me then into the Capricorn energy, which Saturn rules, where I stand in leadership and structure. And then Saturn moves into the future, innovating, and Jupiter moves into Pisces, where I can travel into unseen realms and feel the divinity within, which then gives me a much stronger platform to manifest on. Okay, now there is a little bit of an interesting dynamic that happens on, I'm going to jump all the way to October. Again, I don't think that the actual dates are as important as what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, because this is really about claiming yourself, redefining yourself, and using Saturn as a sustainable energy to build what I want to be through passion versus what is dutiful. Okay, so I just wanted to recap that for a second. Here we see Saturn is in opposition to the sun. And this is just it kind of hit me because I really have to be aware of my ego and where I give up my power to other people. The Libra energy really works hard to be cooperative. Oftentimes, in the more challenging dynamics of Libra, I would rather suffer and acquiesce my desires. I just don't want to get into an argument. So Saturn is here really wanting to anchor your ego in a way that is more aware of the God opportunities that are coming to you versus where you worry about being inadvertently, how can I say this? Feeling outside. Sometimes the signs and the planets that are most invested in human relationships really don't understand their own power of co-creation. And we kind of see this further evidenced by the quincunx over here to Venus. But I wanted to focus more on some of the outer aspects. Now, as I say that, I'm about to go to the 10th, where Mars is making an aspect. I'm laughing at myself because I say one thing and do another. That's my Uranus in Leo. This Mars in Leo to me is just very fired up to get the story moving forward. And the growing trine to Saturn is sort of echoing. Okay, it's almost like the Jupiter trine started a conversation, and the Mars energy is coming in to further define what actions need to be taken in order to move the concepts that Jupiter and Saturn were talking about forward. So I think this is a favorable aspect. And I actually really like Saturn in Aries. I think it sort of gives Aries more the peaceful warrior because it slows Aries down and makes the Aries energy be more conscious and co-creative. So I think this is a very favorable time, and we're going to feel this for about 11 to 12 days, and it will be exact at 10 degrees on October 15th. Now we go to the end of October, and we see that now we're experiencing I'll go to the 30th, a square and a half to Jupiter. This, I think, is where real faith comes in because there's a tension on the outside happening and there's a tension on the inside happening. Somewhere, whatever's going on in this retrograde, you're going to revisit either a belief about yourself, you'll revisit dynamics that could potentially be outside of yourself in the way of people not getting your ideas or not understanding where you want to go with something. And I want to offer this because if any of you are creating something, that you want to put on the internet or you want, to be a path moving forward, I would not tell muggles about it. I would keep it to myself until the concept and the idea had more material form, because the natural thing a muggle will do when you want to create something magical is to say, how are you going to do it? And everybody knows you can't tell how the magic happens. You have to believe it. Now, the last little bit I want to talk about during this Retrograde is, I want to go into November. November 8th. And here we see that Saturn is in a square and a half to both Mars and Jupiter. And it is in a sextile to Uranus. I think the tensions that are created here in this square and a half, because now, we're looking at our beliefs, our expansion, we're looking at potentially people saying, who the hell do you think you are to do that? I know I don't know that everybody's going to get poo-pooed on by other people, but somewhere in the outside world, you're going to revisit some structure that is probably a belief system that wants to kind of hold it down in an old pattern. And I don't know that that's Saturn's influence as much as it is the natural path of the evolution we're experiencing between, kind of paper and pencil and technology. I'm using that as a bit of a term. And Uranus is really requiring an activation. And this Uranian energy will influence Saturn for the rest of the retrograde in sextile. So this is about taking the past and what has happened and allowing myself to keep the things that work or the things that feel progressive in nature. Because not everything from the past needs to be thrown out in order to build a new future. And I think that's what's so important. I also want to kind of click off here, and we see that when we get to this period of time in November, Chiron has snuck back into Aries by now. So we're looking at the wound of self, the potential feeling of being restricted of self, and Neptune, dissipating the feeling of self. All of those things could potentially happen for people who are feeling their humanity, their physical apparatus as real. For those of us that are standing in conscious co-creation, this retrograde gives us a much stronger opportunity to redefine our beliefs, to be brave about maybe bucking the system of other people in order to follow our heart and to be courageous. Mars representing the spine that Leo requires. And in some respects, we can look at Jupiter here as representing the heart, because Jupiter represents faith and expansion on your beliefs. And they are in a trine to Chiron. So this is where Chiron is doubling down on Saturn's, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? This retrograde of Saturn on the agenda is, I said in the beginning of the video, what do you believe? What do you want to be your legacy? Where are my notes? My little belief notes. What do I believe? What do I want to define? What do I want to build on? And what do I want to expand? There could be potentially a tension from old habits, the transit south node in Leo right now. That's going to be another video. But here, I really think that tension at the same time can be an activation or actually create a more easy path to redefining myself. Sometimes if somebody wants to put you in a box so deep into the box, you literally say, baby can't sit in a corner, and you push back on it. And that's what I think the Neptune and Saturn sextile to Uranus gives us an opportunity, is to blow out through our mind, not necessarily an argument or trying to defend ourselves to another person, but rather having an internal revolution, an internal aha moment. So essentially what I'm trying to get at with Saturn in this Aries energy having a retrograde, this is not about repressing yourself. It's not about holding yourself down. It's not about giving up your power to a higher authority. It's the absolute opposite. It is using Saturn's energy as the teacher of discernment and starting to really look at what works for me and what gives me and stokes my passions versus what diminishes that. And my job as a soul inhabiting a human experience is to recognize and to calibrate to my vibration, my frequency, my thoughts to where I want to go. versus where I've been. If you think about it, with Saturn co-ruling Aquarius, Saturn rules history, not only in the past, but the future histories you will create. So Saturn here wants to reward you through wisdom, through discernment, and through the ability to see that it can be those repressive times that offer you the most freedom when you claim it. And that's the conversation with Jupiter. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this opened up a door to look at these planets from a different point of view, from a place of opportunity meets awareness. You know, Jupiter represents opportunity. Saturn represents awareness, wisdom. Saturn is the great teacher, the provider, not of the keys to the kingdom, but of the tools to the kingdom, so that you know when to prune, when to water, when to feed and add fertilizer, when fertilizer feeds your garden, even though it stinks the place up for a while. That's what I'm trying to get at. So I hope this helped. I hope you liked it. If it resonates with you, like, subscribe, share. I'll be back soon and we'll talk about those nodes changing signs. Bye. Take care. Enjoy.